Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second installment of Westfield Public Schools Spotlight on Education. I first want to begin by introducing our panelists who have joined me tonight, and I appreciate in this very busy time of year, you're making the time and making it fit into your schedules. We have two health and PE teachers, Bev Turok and Mary Mulligan. And we also have Sandy Mamery, who is the supervisor of athletics, and Jim DeSarno, who is an assistant principal at the high school, as well as a very successful football coach. And Mary Ann McGann has joined us as well. She's our communications director for the district, community relations for the district. So yeah, let's jump right in. The purpose of tonight's webinar is to extend the discussion from last Tuesday's Board of Education meeting on the revised comprehensive health and PE curriculum. Based on the submitted questions, it makes sense for us to walk through that presentation again and then circle back to the specific questions that were submitted for this event. So I do want to thank all those who have submitted their questions. It's a couple dozen, and we've been able to have some conversation as a group to address those for you this evening. So here are the topics. Sorry, I'm going to bring up my presentation. And I have to share. There we go. Thank you for your patience. Okay. So here are the topics I will be discussing. On the right, there's our table of contents. I'll provide some background on the state's revisions. I'll then discuss our curriculum development process, and then I'll wrap up with some information on professional development and specifics about parental rights for opting out of particular aspects of the health ed instruction. Lastly, the question section will address what the registrants for this webinar have submitted in advance. So let's start with the state's mission. In its latest iteration of the Comprehensive Health and PE Standards, which you'll hear me refer to after this as CHPE. The revised standards focus on health and physical literacy and a life of wellness, as well as helping students develop habits conducive to living healthy, productive lives. The next few slides will provide some background on the state's revision of the standards. First, the grade spans that determine by when the standards are to be taught. These have been reduced from 6 grade spans to 4 grade spans. Also, the 6 standards from the 2014 iteration have been reduced from 6 to 3 standards. And here's some more background. Additional legislation has been passed since 2014 and included in the CHPE 2020 standards. These new mandated statutes appear in age-appropriate context within our curriculum. And these are those pieces of legislation from the prior revision. Some are covered in assemblies, some through programs coming out of the guidance office, but most are covered in the curriculum in classrooms. Now let's talk a bit about our curriculum development process. First, here's our timeline. Teachers, principals, guidance staff, nurses, and content supervisors have all been involved in the revision of the K-12 curricula in health and physical education. In March, we began the revisions. In April, we completed the drafts. In May, we presented the revised curricula to the Curriculum Committee of the Board of Ed. And tonight, we are presenting, last week, we presented the finished products for the board's first reading. Last week was a public presentation. But tonight gives an opportunity for those of you who weren't able to see or attend last week's meeting to have some questions as well. And by the way, please give us some time to go through the presentation and answer the existing questions before you enter any others. We'll probably answer a lot of them in advance, and many of you may have already submitted questions that are similar. So when we get towards the end of the presentation and we're going to look and see if there are more questions, it'll be best if we don't have an overabundance of redundancy, because otherwise we'll have to sift through them. So please be patient and allow us to present, and see if your questions are answered then, and certainly jot down any if they come up while we're presenting. But again, do wait until after we've completed going through the questions. Thank you. What does revising curriculum look like with new standards? So there's a lot of squiggles and red lines on this slide, but I think it's a really good illustration to show you what the process is like. So it's the listing of the performance expectations associated with each standard on the left. So that's directly from the state. Those are the state's performance expectations. You can see that these particular standards fall under movement, skills, and concepts. The image to the right is a snapshot of an objective from our grades 6 through 8 physical education document. The 2.2.8 MSC means the standard is 2.2, physical wellness. The MSC indicates the disciplinary concept of movement, skills, and concepts. And the 0.8 part of the 2.2.8 MSC means by the end of 8th grade. So you can see that we sort of play a game as we're going through this process of acronyms and coding and things of that nature. But when all that is said and done, our document starts to reflect some more straightforward aspects of the curriculum as you will see it when you look at our curriculum in the district. So with these two screenshots, they're from our document for the grade 6 through 8 PE curriculum as well. The objective section leads to the content, scope, and sequence section, which is a listing of the units of study topics. Sticking with our example from the prior slide, you can see that the units of study topics are the vehicle for delivering the standards and achieving the objectives. So on the left, you can see objective A is apply, control, analyze, and refine fundamental movement and sports skills in isolation and applied settings, demonstrating control of motion in relationship between force, flow, time, and space. And then we list the standards that are under that, associated with that objective. And then to the right, that's how the topics are then broken down to make sure that we're covering the standards and that there's coherence for our teachers to work from. And here are the revised standards again, which we saw a few slides back. Our example addressed performance expectations associated with movement, skills, and concepts. That was the MSC part. The same process is followed for all 13 disciplinary concepts on this slide, and the performance expectations associated with each. So this is the process in how we develop the curriculum. We go standard by standard, grade by grade, disciplinary concept by disciplinary concept. So now I will walk us through the unit categories, grade span by grade span, with a little help from our panelists when we get to the middle school and high school. But here are the categories for the units of instruction for K through 5 physical education and health education to start. So who's responsible for teaching these units of instruction? In the grades K through 5 physical education curriculum, instruction is provided by PE teachers. That curriculum is organized according to the headings on the left under physical education. Health education will be provided primarily by classroom teachers, and the instruction is either integrated into existing content area curricula when those opportunities are identified, or they are part of standalone lessons. Some instruction overlaps with PE teachers, and other elements of the curriculum will be addressed via school assemblies, guidance counseling, and through the nurses. So here's a similar listing, but for grades 6 through 8. And these categories are for both physical education on the left and then health education on the right. In grades 6 through 8, PE is taught for 3/4 of the year, 5 days a week, and health is taught for 1/4, 5 days a week. At this point, I'm going to ask Mary Mulligan if you'd like to just provide a little bit of highlights for this slide with regard to 6 through 8 PE and health.
I can just tell you that process of going through line our curriculum with the state curriculum was very tedious, but essentially we really haven't changed what we're delivering, except for maybe one item. It was just a matter of reorganizing what we have making sure that all of our health teachers are teaching them in this order. We regroup them based off of what is actually being taught in the classroom.
Excellent. A little later on, I have a listing of some changes between the last set of standards and now. And again, really, as I just want to echo what Mary said, and that's that there haven't been a lot of changes 6 through 12, and we'll focus on those that there have been. And then, yeah, we can answer the questions a little after that. Okay. So 9 through 12, it's similar. There are categories on the left for physical education and on the right for health education. In grades 9 through 12, PE is taught 3 marking periods, 4 days a week, and health is taught for 1 marking period, 4 days a week. All grades 6 through 12 curricula are taught by certified health and PE teachers. Bev Torak, would you like to talk a little bit about some of the activities that you all enjoy?
Sure. Welcome. Thank you for attending. We're always excited about our teaching, and we don't always get to share that with many. So I am delighted to be here with you. I'm going to go through just a brief overview of what we do in the high school physical education. In the 9th grade, we're bringing in the 2 middle schools as one. And so many years ago, we learned about Project Adventure, which is a trade name, and it involves team building, problem solving, working together, and it's very SEL oriented. It's challenge by choice, and they really learn trust and activities that they blend together. And so we always felt that that was perfect for the 2 middle schools to come together as one into the high school. So we begin our unit or their 9th grade experience with Project Adventure. We go into some team sports, and then we also do an intro to fitness. And they get both introduction to our fitness center, which is state of the art. And then we also do body weight and circuit training and bands and other types of fitness. So they're not just thinking that they can only get fitness in a fitness center. They can do things on their own as well. And we finish out the year with other team sports going outside. As a 10th grade unit, we start outside with some flag football and other flag rugby. And then when it's too cold to be out, we come back into court games with basketball and a European game called shoot ball. That involves a rebounder and very different sports oriented, because not all kids are really into sports. So this is more about strategy and moving on to volleyball. And then in their spring semester, they get health, and then they get driver ed. And then as juniors, we try to push them more towards being more strategic and not just making activities play. And whether it's more about, let's see what you can learn about strategies now that you have a good base of skills under your belt. We have some racket sports that we play, badminton, pickleball. We also play a games unit, and this unit requires them to do a presentation. So they're doing some public speaking. They're having to prepare for that in a group and then present the game to their class and have the class play their game. And I will tell you, some are fantastic, and others, they appreciate how well we control a class. They've said that many times. And it's a learning experience. But it's also very good public speaking. And then we have worked very hard at bringing in Project Adventure 2. And 2 means it's the higher level. So now we're belaying, and we're going up in a harness inside the gym. And if they choose to climb all the way to the top, they can write their name on a beam. And then we finish out with some archery. So the strategies is the big push in the 11th grade. As seniors, we are, excuse me, I was just getting distracted by my cat. As seniors, our fitness program is now, they they are now making their own program. So now they've developed we do fitness in every day. We do some sort of fitness. But now as seniors, they are making up their own program, which suits them. And they're working one-on-one with the teacher on what they should do, how they should do it. They're doing some research on that. And it's not just about using the fitness center, but it's learning how to navigate the fitness center, learning how to navigate and follow a workout, because the following year they're out on their own. So are they going to join a fitness center? Are they going to do things on their own? We want them to be lifelong learners and use their knowledge of fitness to improve themselves. We do also many team sports. We do pickleball and badminton. Hopefully they'll have more strategies under their belt. The volleyball is way different than the first 3 levels. They are now spiking, they're blocking, and we get some great games going. It's dear to my heart, but it's also great to watch them develop over the years. And then we're winding out that unit with the senior unit with leisure and recreational activities. You may have seen them out there playing some can jam or cornhole and ladder ball and spike ball, and learning how to keep score and find other ways to have some outlets to release some of their stress. So our units are very much about social emotional learning, always about improving fitness and nutrition, and really to become self-advocates for living a healthy lifestyle. So in a nutshell, that's it. It was a quick version, but I think you probably got the gist of what we're doing at the high school.
Thanks, Bev. I know you really enjoy sharing some of these activities with the staff as well. When you play on your own, you have your own project adventure kind of experience, and I know that's also a big favorite of the teachers.
Well, we did. I'm just going to toot our horn here for a minute. We did do an in-service for the whole school with using some of our connection activities with Project Adventure. And the next day we were watching other classes perform these same activities, and it was all about connection. So connecting with your class helps you perform better in the classroom if you know them better. And we as a staff did another in-service on our own in that same line just the other day, and reviewed some of our belaying techniques, as well as learning some new games that we're really excited to share.
That's great. Team building. Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I appreciate our panelists giving us some sense of what the daily experience for the students looks like. And so that's a bit of the content of the curriculum. Now we're going to transition into talking a little bit about the resources that we use in our classes K through 12 for delivering the instruction. For K through 5, we'll start there. We should, so PE is very similar. The standards haven't changed what the fun activities that students are doing in K through 5. So there aren't really changes too much to discuss there, but let's talk about the resources that are used in our health education portion of the CHPE. So our instruction in some topics for K2 includes Brain Pop Junior videos, and that's on your left. And then instruction for some topics in grades 3 through 5 will include Brain Pop. So there's Brain Pop Junior and Brain Pop. Teachers may also use Kids Health on the left and Everify on the right. Now, these are resources that educators agreed were age and school appropriate for addressing the concept in the revised standards of promoting respect and acceptance of differences in an individual's race, religion, gender expression, ethnicity, disability, and socioeconomic background. All 3 resources here are books from Todd Parr, who is a New York Times bestselling author, and his books have received multiple awards. In response to feedback from the community as we began this journey to develop our curriculum this year, we wanted to be as specific and clear as possible when it comes to lessons that could be characterized as sex education. There are two, both lessons will be presented in the spring of next year. One references reproductive organs. That's, and to the left is that scope and sequence again. So you can see the topics that are listed there. So one references reproductive organs in the context of a 5th grade life science lesson. And that lesson is not on reproductive organs exclusively, it's on the 11 organ systems, and reproductive organs are mentioned. Another lesson provides instruction on puberty, and that lesson will be taught by school nurses. The puberty lesson has been part of the curriculum and taught by nurses for many years. In the September Professional Development in-Service Day, nurses will select one common resource for teaching puberty. In each case, the life science lesson and the puberty lesson, teachers and nurses will communicate the specifics of the lesson and the resources to be used directly with parents prior to each lesson. Parents are encouraged to contact the educators if they have any questions about these lessons, and they also have the ability to opt their child out of that instruction for an alternative learning activity. There'll be more on that later in the presentation and underlined even further based on the questions we received since last Tuesday's presentation. Now, in grades 6 through 8, teachers will continue to use the Glencoe Teen Health textbook, as well as other resources listed here. That textbook's been around for a bit, but our teachers reviewed it alongside the new standards and feel that it will continue to get the job done just fine. And then there are some other resources that teachers may use in class. And grades 9 through 12, the high school health education teachers do not use a textbook. They use many resources that fall under these categories. As they have done in the past, health ed teachers will share their lessons and syllabi in advance of the instruction. I'll wind up underlining this again later, but with 6 through 12, we have the dedicated class, each quarter taught by the teachers who are health educators. So those lessons are, for the most part, self-contained, for lack of a better term, and they're easily shared, and information on these lessons are easily shared with parents. And that partnership has been going well for many years as far as, sharing any concerns there might be, or clarifying anything that parents may want clarified. So that's an easy way to see the resources also that will be used. And here are the ways information on health education will be shared with parents. More formally, I just mentioned it in passing. K through 5, teachers will communicate with parents regarding instruction and sensitive topics. The two I mentioned are the ones that we would anticipate potentially. And then curriculum will be posted on the curriculum page of the district school website. Grades 6 through 8, teacher lessons and activities are posted for students on Google Classroom. There's the syllabus, and curriculum will be posted on the curriculum page of the district website, and the same for 9 through 12. So here's some focus in the slide on parental rights, the opt-out options process. We invite parents. It's worth establishing how we acknowledge this by reading this language. I don't usually like to read slides at folks, but we invite parents, guardians to examine the curriculum and reach out to your child's teacher with any questions about curricular objectives. We acknowledge that parents are the primary sexuality educators for their children. And while we encourage families to have their students participate in these essential health topics, parents do have the option of excluding their child from, quote, any part of instruction in health, family life education, or sex education that is in conflict with his/her conscience or sincerely held moral or religious belief. And to facilitate this review on the part of parents, a letter will be sent to every parent guardian in September with instructions on how to opt out of specific curricular objectives. So before getting to those questions, again, we'll talk just a moment about the curriculum implementation. In the area of professional development, all educators involved with teaching the revised CHPE curriculum will participate in in-service training in September to prepare them for the implementation. They will take a deep dive into the legislative updates, the revised CHPE policy, the revised standards and new units of study, and how to work with parents who may want to opt out of certain aspects of health instruction. Okay, so let's review the process that we've gone through this year before we get to those questions. The focus of the new New Jersey student learning standard is to promote awareness of healthy behaviors. The revisions are age appropriate. The CHPE curricula will be posted on the district website once it's approved by the board. Parents are encouraged to review the curriculum. Teachers will be provided PD in September to prepare them, and teachers will receive professional development in September, and parents' guardians will be provided guidance on the opt-out piece of it. Okay, so that this is a good place in the presentation before kind of bringing it back to how it ended at the board meeting last Tuesday, the presentation. This is a good place for the pre-submitted questions. So I think what you'll find is that it underlines and reinforces some of what we've already discussed, but I didn't want to gloss over any of the questions if there was a nuance that wasn't already covered. So here, regarding the first batch here, oops, sorry. Okay. So there was a question with regard to, so I've categorized them based on content and resources and the opt-out process and some other categories. So the first group of questions had to do with the differences, significant changes. So I touched on those, but I'll go in a little bit more detail here. The term, when it comes to life science in 5th grade, for example, I mentioned that K-5 lesson. So that's a little different in that the term reproductive organs will be added to a grade 5 lesson on body systems, which will feature the 11 organ systems of the body. The visual for this lesson appeared in that slide I showed you a moment ago, and clinical terminology for the reproductive organs and genitals will not be taught in the K-5 grade span. So in teaching the life science lesson with regard to 11 body organ systems, we list all 11. Respect and acceptance. So that's another, the resources specifically, the Todd Parr books. That's something that's reinforced in the new standards further. So while there's nothing new in Westfield Public Schools about providing instruction on respect, acceptance, and dignity for all, the curricula has been updated to include resources that address the concept in the revised standards of, quote, promoting respect and acceptance of differences in an individual's race, religion, gender expression, ethnicity, disability, and socioeconomic background. Now, those resources that I shared do so in a generalized context of, in fact, dignity and respect for all people. Some more with regard to that group of questions. In grades 6 through 8, changes include that puberty instruction will no longer be taught while separated by gender. Previous practice was to separate students by gender for human sexuality and physiology lessons, but after reviewing best practices in health education, as well as implementing new technology resources that allow students to privately message teachers with questions, students will no longer be separated by gender for these lessons. So that's a change. In grades 9 through 12, new topics based on legislation include mental health, New Jersey Safe Haven Infant Protection Act, sexting, sexual abuse and assault awareness and prevention education, and consent. Also, vaping is a new topic added to substance issues. Another group of questions focused on gender identity and how that is taught. So I'll walk through those. In K-5, as referenced in a previous slide and just moments ago, gender identity is addressed in the context of respect and acceptance for all, and not as a discrete lesson on gender. In grades 6 through 8, students will be taught the terminology in order to differentiate between gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation. In grades 9 through 12, gender identity will continue to be taught during sophomore year as part of the Circles of Sexuality unit. The unit looks at gender, gender roles, sexual orientation, and more. So then there were a number of questions that can be depicted here as opt-out questions. So I'll walk through those. the content. So K-5 to start, since most opt-out questions related to that grade span. In the fall, teachers will receive parent opt-out guidance, and they will provide an alternative, and teachers will provide an alternate learning activity if it is requested by the parents. With regard to opting out of the entire health curriculum, which is reflected in this question, some people ask, the law is clear that parents have the option of excluding their child from, I'll quote it again, any part of instruction in health, family life education, or sex education that is in conflict with his or her conscience or sincerely held moral or religious belief. So it's important to keep in mind that at the elementary level, the great majority of health curriculum includes instruction on topics such as nutrition, hygiene, dialing 911, the importance of wearing bicycle helmets, getting along with peers, being a good citizen, etc. So if that's all part of health instruction and parents have specific concerns maybe about a topic that is not related to health and well-being in the sense of physical health and well-being, then how can parents and teachers get on the same page in K through 5 when for considerations of opting out? So I try to illustrate it here for you. Again, going back to just K through 5 for now. These two screenshots are based on that scope and sequence we talked about a little bit earlier. So on the left is kindergarten through grade 2, and on the right is grades 3 through 5. It's actually 5th grade for those two topics on the right screenshot. And then above that, I put some information there about the process. So we looked at how curriculum is developed, and I shared that screenshot earlier. And here are these two screenshots. The most effective and straightforward way for parents to identify areas of concern with regard to conflict with conscience and sincere religious belief is to look through the 5 pages of scope and sequence where the topics of instruction are listed. It looks like this. From the first section that includes topics for kindergarten through 5, one would expect that topics such as the senses and personal hygiene would not be an issue. Perhaps the topic, all living beings have the capacity to reproduce, though, might be something a parent would want to know more about. So the parent can email or call the teacher, who in this particular case would share that this topic does not focus in any way on human reproduction, but rather that plants, animals, and humans have offspring and then take care of them. So that particular lesson is more focused on almost sort of the family unit and caring for offspring. Meanwhile, in grade 5, as has been the case for many years, nurses teach a lesson on puberty. Prior to this instruction, as I said before, nurses will send home details. So, that's one that traditionally parents like to know more about. And of course, if they would rather manage these topics at home, they can request an alternate assignment, and the nurses would be prepared to do that. In grades 6 through 12, you've heard me say this a little earlier, health educators teach in quarter courses their specific lessons that can be shared, and parents would just need to, parents can look at the syllabi and lessons and request alternate assignments from those teachers as well. There are a couple of practical additional questions. For example, will there be a recording of this webinar? Yes, we are recording it now. And where is the CHPE curriculum posted? Once the board has an opportunity tomorrow to vote on it again, and if it is passed, it will be posted on our website. So at this point, I want to first of all thank, and I'm going to ask the panelists just to stick around in case they would like to add to anything. In fact, before I go and check the, to see if there are some questions in the Q&A and bring the presentation down, I'm going to see if there are any panelists who wanted to add anything to what I might have said. Okay. Alrighty then. So we're about close to 40 minutes in. I'm going to do my best now to check the Q&A and see if there's anything more we can share. And again, I would say to panelists, if there's something that you'd like to share, then you can. Let me look through here and just see. Some of the questions might have come up before we got to this part. There's a question, will the elementary or fourth grade be taught about gender ID and using bathrooms or not yet? There's nothing in the curriculum about bathroom use. I discussed gender ID as being part of units of study, lessons that pertain to, acceptance and dignity for all and respect for all. In K-5, is there explicit instruction on what not to teach? Well, there will be professional development provided on how to teach anything new. And it will also reinforce that with teachers that it's important to stick to the curriculum as it's written. And whether it's health instruction or any instruction, when teachers are going to introduce something that might seem off the book of curriculum, they can consult with other colleagues and a supervisor. And if they're going to use a resource that is not already commonly used, then they would, they would consult and it would go according to that. There's a lot of questions on gender. I think it's been pretty clear in the presentation and tonight that this terminology will be taught from grades 6 through 8. And in 12th grade, 9th through 12th grade, it will be handled as it has been in that unit. So the best thing to do there, if you have interest in learning more about that, is to ask the teachers directly, 6 through 12, how discussions on gender are handled. As far as K-5, as I said, there is not specific instruction beyond the quote that I shared from the legislation that all people are deserving of respect and dignity, etc. Yeah, that's an important question. What will the kids who are opted out do during those lessons? Of course, it would be great to give you a specific, but there are going to be, so specifically the teachers will determine that. And again, in the cases of 6 through 12, it's not unheard of. And so teachers know how to handle that. In K-5, again, there seems to be very limited opportunities or areas that the opt-out clause would pertain to that instruction. So again, best thing to do, look through the scope and sequence, look for the topics as we went through as an exercise earlier, and then just contact the teacher and talk about that. Did you mention puberty will now be taught in a co-ed setting? Yes, it will be taught in a co-ed setting, not K through 5, but it will be taught that way 6 through 12. I think 6 through 8 was the change that we discussed. And the reasons were shared a little earlier. There were a couple questions that were submitted that are very specific to maybe an individual that's off the topic of health and PE, but specific to maybe a project or an experience that did or didn't take place. So I would encourage you to reach out to the teacher and ask perhaps why that lesson might not have been taught. Sorry, I'm just scanning through. All right, yeah, there were questions about the presentation on February 22nd, and there was a link there. I haven't spoken to it because it's not in the curriculum, and we have included the resources we're using. So the answer is no, we're not using those links. And I hope that, that answers that question. Yeah, and just to be super clear, so that was Advocates for Youth lessons that were posted in February 22nd. They were reviewed and they are not used. And then there were some other resources that we didn't look at and people have brought up, but they're bringing, like, I think it's amaze.org. That's not something we're using as well. So if we haven't said it, we're not using it. Yeah, so again, if there are questions about why we're teaching what we're teaching, our professionals got together, um, looked at the standards, I described that whole process, and developed the curriculum, and our teachers will receive professional development and teach it. There are a couple questions that might make sense, like practical ones with regard to driver's ed. I would be more comfortable sending that off to our staff to respond to that directly. There's a question about would the resources be listed as well? Well, yes, on the curriculum page, resources will be listed. The presentation is available, so the resources are in that, and we can list the resources as well. If again, more questions on gender. So this is obviously this is a really important issue for some. As stated, what we've said will be discussed and taught, and if it's not, like puberty blockers, no, that's not in the K-5 curriculum. And again, if you want to know more about the 6 through 12, you can look in the curriculum, look at the lesson plans, and ask the teachers. Okay. There's a question about how we determine age appropriate. Not only have we determined age appropriate, well, we have our professionals involved in developing the curriculum, and they also have to look at the standards and see what they feel fits in line with community expectations, their own expertise, and areas like that. And so we've also had the conversation about school versus home appropriate. When in doubt, we feel that if something could be home appropriate, the conversation would take place home if a teacher believed that was, they advised it was a better place for it. So again, it's all right there in the curriculum. The topics are listed. If there's a concern about a topic, please reach out to the teacher, when lessons start to be taught next year. The curriculum should be posted Wednesday if the board approves tomorrow. Yeah. Again, opt-out situations will be handled in a way that fits the situation. So if there's going to be one of those Todd Parr books read, then a teacher would find an alternate activity for that particular student. Again, that's speaking K-5. If you're talking about 6 through 12, same thing. You want to count on the teachers to, and they've done this for a long time. They would know how to provide an alternate assignment in a way that makes perfect sense. Okay. There are some specific questions, and we could actually start asking, will this be taught? Will that be taught? But that's the point of the curriculum. So we're listing, so rather than go through what could be literally hundreds of will this be taught, will that be taught, it's all in the curriculum. So please look at the curriculum. And if you still have a question, you can reach out to either my office, or if it's the 6 through 12, you can reach out to the teacher or a building administrator. So let's do it that way. Is it the state mandate for puberty to be taught co-ed, or is it Westfield's district's decision? It's both, really. It's an expectation expressed by the Department of Ed, and it's also just good research and based on technology that's available, as it said on that slide. That was the decision. Again, remember, if there's something about something like that that appeals to conflicts with your conscience or sincerely held religious beliefs, then just reach out to the teacher. Will the brain pop videos be shared with parents prior to being used? Yes. Let me rephrase that. If it pertains to health in any way, brain pop videos are used all the time for all kinds of things. Well, I've seen this question a couple times, so I'll just go back to it. It's the idea that how can we ensure that interdisciplinary units will not include lessons we have opted our children out of? All teachers will be made aware of what the new health standards pertain to, but again, depending on your grade level, 6 through 12, it's a moot point. Well, for the most part, I mean, again, the health is taught in health. K through 5, it's spelled out what's taught. So as far as interdisciplinary, the teachers who teach health also teach ELA, math, science, etc. So they're generalists, so they'll all be aware. And if it's, say, an area outside of the core, the classroom teacher, they have their own curriculum to teach. Yeah, so that covers a few questions here. Okay, so now we're getting to a bit of so we've answered a lot of them. Panelists, can you see these questions?
Yes.
Can someone speak to when are changes during adolescence brought up? I mean, that's to me puberty, but can an expert speak a little bit about that?
I got that. So changes during adolescence is definitely brought up, should be by 5th grade by the school nurses, definitely by this in 6th grade. And we teach them separately, but or I have taught them separately, but in the same room, to make them aware of the changes for their particular gender. That's the 6th grade level of changes for adolescents. In 7th grade, I believe that they are made aware of the changes of adolescence for both genders. So that's where it starts.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Puberty blockers have come up a few times. Can anyone speak to the context, if that's taught, what the context for that is?
I did address that in the text on the side. We do not teach about puberty blockers. However, we talk about the importance of hormones and changing, the changes that occur from our hormones and how important hormones are for our growth and development. And we talk about steroids, again, another hormone, right? It's an issue that changes how your body functions. So we do talk about that. But talking about puberty blockers is not a lesson. It's not something that you teach. But if the student has a question, it's explained what it is and what it can do.
Okay, thank you again, Mary. Still scanning? Okay, so yeah, so I don't mean to be dismissive of any questions, but we answered and got back to it. So as we said, there's curriculum, and what's in the curriculum is there. We won't be teaching elementary children that they can switch gender. We don't feel that that is age or school appropriate. And I feel like that's expressed very clearly by showing you the curriculum and saying what's in it. If it's not in there, it's not in there. Okay, I'm just skimming back and forth now. I think we've touched on a bunch. There was one in there about, I just know it's a complicated topic with PE, and that's, there's something there about driver's ed. If I can find that one again. So what I'm going to do, I apologize. I'm having trouble finding that one, but there we go. In 10th grade, why is driver's education not considered students' health course? Thereby quarters of PE and 1/4 of health, which would be driver's ed. Other high schools follow this curriculum. Can you explain why not? I'm fine with somebody from our panel answering that, but I'll start by just saying it's a discussion that's being had, and that there's a very high awareness that this goes on differently in other schools, and that there are positives and negatives and benefits either way. So we are having that discussion, and it is ongoing. The curriculum is written, but that conversation is still ongoing. So if there was a change made, we would revise the curriculum if that were to come about, and then it would go through the process again based on that. Okay, so we're just nearing the end of our time here. Yeah, thank you for reposting the 10th grade driver's ed question. So yeah, I do want to thank everybody. It's a beautiful day out, and I want to thank people for coming on with us today to share your questions. I also want to thank the panelists for spending some time with us. I know, as I said earlier, it's a very busy time of year. And then we can wrap up by saying, if there's still any concerns that anyone might have that they feel haven't been answered here, please email. You can start by emailing me directly, and I can send it out to anybody who can answer it better than I can. But it's easy to find my email on the website, but it's ppinero@westfieldnjk12.org. So if we haven't touched on a question here and you'd like to make sure that it's addressed, please do that, and we'll be able to get back to you. Okay. All right. Well, again, thanks everybody. I appreciate all your time, and I wish everybody happy, safe, and enjoyable summer. Thank you, everyone.